the pupillary reflex and we should also talk a little bit about the accommodation. Pupillary reflex and accommodation. So it has been seen that when you shine light on one eye, the pupil is seen to contract. Usually the pupil has a diameter of around 8 millimeters and it can contract till up to 1.5 millimeters. So if you shine light on a pupil, the pupil contracts, the pupil becomes smaller, the iris becomes larger and the pupil becomes smaller. In the eye that is shown light, this is called direct pupillary reflex. The response of the eye by contracting its pupil on the perception of light is pupillary reflex. Now obviously, just like any other reflex, it has its reflex arc or reflex pathway. The first component being the receptor, the photoreceptor, the efferent pathway being the optic nerve. Those are axons of the ganglion cells, and then there are centers, there are nuclei which will bring about the processing of this reflex, and then the efferent pathway, which is the oculomotor nerve in this case, and then you have the effector organ, which are the ciliary body and the muscles in the iris. So pupillary reflex. The other thing about pupillary reflex is that when you shine light on one eye, the other eye also shows the similar kind of constriction. So you have direct light reflex, pupils being constricted on the eye that is having the perception of light, and also the other eye which doesn't have light falling on it will also constrict bilateral. So there is bilateral constriction at the same time. This is direct light reflex, and on the other eye we see consensual or indirect light reflex. So let us study the pathway of the pupillary light reflex first, and then we'll talk about accommodation reflex. The pupillary light reflex. So the receptors are in the retina. They are the photoreceptors. So temporal fibers arising from the ganglion cells will stay on the ipsilateral side. Nasal fibers will cross over to the other side. So crossover, nasal fibers become contralateral. Then there is some axons of the ganglion cell which will supply pretectal nucleus or nuclei of the pretectum. Now this nuclear so the pretectum will supply Edinger-Westphal nuclei on both sides. So there is bilateral innervation from one pretectal nuclei. The same is also true for the other side. So, light falling here will be sent to the pretectal nuclei, and this pretectal nuclei will stimulate Edinger-Westphal nuclei on the both sides. Presympathetic ganglionic fibers will arise from Edinger-Westphal nuclei. They will go to ciliary ganglions. They will go to the ciliary ganglion. Obviously, the same will happen on the other side. So this is parasympathetic preganglionic fibers. They will go to the ciliary ganglion, and from the ciliary ganglion there will be generation of postganglionic parasympathetic fibers, which will stimulate the ciliary body and the iris. So both the ciliary body and the iris will constrict. The circular muscle in the iris will bring about a constriction of the pupil, and the ciliary body will also constrict, thereby loosening the zonules and allowing for the lens to increase in anterior-posterior diameter. So anyway, here in this case, what are the components? The first component is the photoreceptor. Let us draw a photoreceptor here. So the first component being the photoreceptor. The second component being the axon of the ganglion cell. These are the nuclei, the center for integration of the reflex, and this is the afferent path. So when you shine light on any one of the eye, there will be this pathway which will result in constriction of the pupil on the same eye and also on the contralateral eye, because the same pathway as here is being followed also on this side. So this is basically what the pupillary reflex is all about. Now, this is optic nerve. So when you check the pupillary reflex, you are checking for the integrity and the well-being of the photoreceptors, the optic nerve, the centers, and also the efferent nerve. The efferent nerve in this case is the third nerve or the oculomotor nerve. So optic nerve, center, oculomotor nerve. Now regarding the accommodation reflex. What is accommodation reflex? It has been seen that if you ask a subject to look at the distance, at the periphery, and then ask him to focus at a near point, at something near to, like for example, reading or looking at an object while working at it. So you see so you see three things happen. The first thing you notice is that the eyeballs converge. The eyeballs will come together. While looking at a distance, they are looking out parallelly. While looking at a near object, they will converge. So convergence of eyeball. You also notice that the pupils constrict. So accommodation reflex, reflex has three components. One, convergence. Pupillary constriction and increase in anterior posterior diameter of lens. Or antero-posterior diameter of lenses, because both the eye will be involved. So three things happen. Convergence you can readily see. Constriction also you can see. The anterior-posterior diameter increase is a little difficult to see, but it can be seen. There are maneuvers to see it. So the constriction of the lens happens also in accommodation reflex. So it is happening regularly in light reflex. It also happens in accommodation reflex. So what is the difference? Obviously there must be some difference. During accommodation reflex, when we are asked to look at a near object, when we shift our focus from the infinity to the near object, then we see convergence of the eyeball. We also see constriction of the pupil. Now, how is this constriction of the pupil different from the constriction of the pupil of the pupillary reflex? So, what is the difference in pathway? The difference in pathway lies here. So, you see, the signal will come to the cortex. So the signal will come to the cortex, it will be processed in the cortex, area number 17, 18, 19, and the cortical processing will feel a difference in the two retinal image. When we have to look to a close by object, there is an initial disparity or a difference in the retinal image. So the retina senses this disparity and sends a signal from the cortex to the pretectal nuclei. It sends a signal from the cortex to the pretectal nuclei. So the pathway becomes a little different. So what are the components? The first component, as usual, is the receptor. The second component is the optic nerve, optic tract, optic radiation, and the center, initial center, is the center at the cortex. Then it signals the pretectum. So then the pretectum being stimulated will signal the Edinger-Westphal nuclei and bring about constriction of the pupil via the same old pathway. But here the efferent pathway is longer and the center is at the cortex. Moreover, the convergence, the process of convergence is processed from the cortex to the frontal eye peak. This is in the frontal lobe. This is in the frontal lobe. So this is in the frontal lobe. From the frontal lobe, there will be information coming to the oculomotor or the third nerve nuclei, and the third nerve nuclei will bring about the constriction of muscles, oculomotor muscles, and bring about the convergence. So both the medial rectus have to be stimulated for the eyeball to be brought together. So the pathway for pupillary reflex and the pupil constriction in accommodation reflex is different. Next, we need to talk a little bit about color blindness. Color blindness is found in the population. In the general population, males will contribute to much of the subject who are color blind. So, almost up to 8% of males are color blind in one fashion or the other. They do not have adequate color discriminatory sense so as to make them suitable for certain professions. Females, they don't have much of a color blindness because majority of their color blindness is contributed by one or the other defect in the sex chromosomes, particularly the X chromosome. So, the females having complementary set of X chromosome, even if one is deficient, the other takes over, and there is apparently no phenotypic expression of color blindness. But males having the disadvantage of only one X will show color blindness. Now, what are the different forms of color blindness? So, color blindness can be of many varieties. They can be due to defect in the cone themselves, or absence of cones, or it may be due to anomaly or change of the photopigments. The opsin part of the photopigment, or the proteinaceous part, is what can change. The retinal part, 11th retinal part, is always the same in all the 4 photopigments, 1 for the rods and 3 for the 3 cones. The opsin, the sequence of amino acid in the protein chain of opsin can change, thereby giving rise to significant spectral differences in the photopigments. So let us see. So when you have defect or absence of cones, you can have the disorder which are as such. First and foremost, protanopia. Of course, this will refer to the long wavelength pigment containing cone. So this is the cone which was sensitive to light. So it might be defective or it might be totally absent. The second variety is where the middle frequency receptor cones or the M cones might be absent or defective. Deuteranopia. Protanopia, red cones are absent or defective. Protanopia is when green cones are effective or absent. The third being tritanopia, whereby the S cones or the cones contributing for sensation of blue light might be defective or absent. Now please note, these two are X-linked. So, protanopia and deuteranopia will only be expressed in males because the gene for the manufacturing of various proteins and the photopigment required for protanopia and deuteranopia are in the sex chromosomes, the X chromosome, because males have a single X chromosome. So if that is deficient, then they will express the disorder. Females carrying two X chromosomes, even if one of them is defective, the other will make up for it. Therefore, it is said that females are the carriers for color blindness, but the males are the sufferer. So these variety of color blindness, whereby the cones are either defective or absent, makes up only 1% of the 8% that we talked about. So this is relatively a rare disorder. Tritanopia is very rare, and the male to female ratio is equal, because the gene for tritanopia, the gene for the blue receptor and the blue photopigment is in the chromosome number 7. So this is an autosome. Both males and females carry it without any difference. So if something goes wrong in the 7th chromosome, coding for the photopigment or for the receptor, it will be the prevalence will be, or the occurrence rate will be the same in male. Now let us talk about the relatively commoner variety of color blindness, whereby the photopigments are deficient. The photopigments are not the usual. There is some disorder in the photopigment. The cones are around, all the three cones, the cones contributing to red, the cones contributing to blue, the cones contributing to green is around, but the photopigment they contain might be deficient. That is, the photopigment, the opsin part, might be different. They might contain a different combination of amino acid, making them a different protein. Thereby, they have a different absorptive pattern. So the spectrum of light that they absorb and signal downstream is different. So the first thing is as usual, protanomelia. So this is an anomaly. Please note, this is not an anopia. This is not a pure absence. This is an anomaly. This is a anomaly. Protanomelia. Protanomelia. And deuteranomelia. And third variety is trianomelia. So protanomelia, deuteranomelia, and trianomelia. So basically this is how color blindness is classified. And color blindness can be tested by using different colors of wools, or there is a booklet which is known as the Ishihara's chart, which can bring about a diagnosis of the different kind of color blindness.